Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Talkin' Shed podcast. Today we've got a special guest up here. It's just myself and Dru Egli with SurePoint. Dru, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good. You are a territory manager, right, for SurePoint?
Yes, sir. I cover what we call the Eastern Corn Belt, which is northern half of Indiana, northern half of Illinois, all of Michigan, and all of Ohio.
Cool. So we've worked together in the past on a lot of different stuff. And, you know, for a long time, of course, everyone knew them as Surefire. When did that transition take place anyway?
That happened just about 2 years ago in March. It'll be 2 years that joint venture between what used to be Surefire and John Deere started a joint venture, and we call it SurePoint now.
Sure. So SurePoint is known to me, and what I know them the most for is planter tank brackets, the tender trailer, quick draw stuff. But before we jump into everything with SurePoint, I'd like to dive more into Dru. Where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from northeast Indiana, born and raised. I'm about town of Howe is where I'm from, but that's about 30 miles west of the Ohio line and a mile south of the Michigan line. So
Okay.
up in the northeast corner.
Yeah. And so from what I understand, you do a little deer hunting yourself too?
Yeah, I enjoy hunting. Got some kids that are getting into it, and it's a good reason to spend some time with my kids.
Sweet. That's awesome. Do you have any luck this year?
We killed 2 doe, no bucks, but it was the first deer for both my boys, so that was pretty fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's hard to beat.
Yeah, it was. I didn't even carry a gun this year, and I loved it.
Really? How old are they?
My youngest is a 10 and 12-year-old.
Okay.
Actually, just turned 13. So
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I try to bring them along. I brought them along for a few seasons. We have youth season here in Ohio, and then gun season. I brought them along for a few of those. But then if I shoot one or Cody does, we'll bring them out there in the evening and let them help blood trail. And
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
they talk about that stuff forever.
Absolutely. My daughter she'll be 15 in April. She was disappointed we didn't get out near as much with her, but
Yeah.
there's next year. She was holding out for a buck though. She wanted to show her brothers how to kill a buck. So
That's awesome. So how long have you been with SurePoint?
just about 10 years,
Okay.
9.5 years. Yeah.
Nice.
So been around a little while. Previous to that, I worked at a John Deere dealer, I was an IS, so precision ag side, and
Sure.
I've been in ag all my life ever since I was good work. Started in ag, so
Sweet. And SurePoint's headquarters would be in Kansas, correct?
yep, they're in northwest Kansas. So
Okay.
I think it's about 10 miles from Nebraska and probably 50 miles from Colorado. So we're extreme northwest up there.
What started SurePoint?
There was a Matt Walters and Blaine Ginther were working for a company that was, doing much like what you guys do, sell, components and tanks, and they were putting systems together, and said there's a need for a systems approach, not just components.
Sure.
And kind of went with Matt's brother named Josh and started what we know as Surefire Ag at that point, and kind of took off running. Grew pretty fast. So yeah, we're up to like 130 employees now.
Wow, really?
We have a harnessing division, so all our harnessing is made in-house by not in-house, our sister company called SurePoint Electronics. And so we make all the harnessing. It's all braided.
Yep.
So very durable harnessing. We check all our harnessing with a computerized tester to make sure the pins are correct and the crimps are good and that kind of stuff. We make a lot of our own electronic components and boards and potting and just a whole lot of stuff. So
Wow. Interesting. It's amazing when some people find a little niche or a need for something, what it can grow into.
Yeah, that whole electronics division started just because the harness company we were using, quality wasn't what we wanted. We were having a lot of issues, and we asked, hey, we'll implement some testing, we'll pay for the equipment to do it, and they didn't want to do it. So we decided, well, I guess we'll do our own thing. So
sure. Yeah, Surefire or SurePoint is just a good staple name around any planter. You know, they're known for their diaphragm pumps. You know, you see those everywhere. So let's dive into that. Let's talk about on the planter, what products are most common on the planter. If, you know, let's say I've got a 10-year-old 1770 and I'm looking to add a system. Mm-hmm. Walk me through what you would start with for 2x2.
Okay. So how the whole process starts for us is we have a questionnaire that, you know, our dealer can fill out, or the end customer, and we'll try to connect them with the dealer. But we basically ask them a whole bunch of questions, like, you know, obviously what the planter is, what your rate is, what your speed, how many sections, do you need tanks, where do you want those tanks, the placement device, just basically about 15 or 20 questions. And from those questions, we'll custom build you a system that achieves that very need. So, you know, we have different pump sizes. We have electric pumps, we have hydraulic pumps, and you know, based off of like the flow amounts and you know, overall flow, and then we'll look at individual row flow. We'll put together a system that is going to work very well for that exact need.
Sure. You know, talk through. Let's talk through that diaphragm pump a little bit. A lot of guys have seen those on the planters. It looks different than most. Usually you're seeing like a centrifugal hydraulic or a John Blue ground drive. What's different about that diaphragm pump, and what makes it, why did Surefire choose that pump?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, through the years, SurePoint, Surefire's been in business about 15 years, and obviously we want to distinguish ourselves with something that's different. Well, that diaphragm pump is the most reliable pump that we have found. It's an AR pump. They come from Italy. Their diaphragm, you know, the different sizes basically adds more diaphragm. So the smallest one is a PR 17 that actually has 3 smaller diaphragms in it. They're oil bath designs, so the pump, the whole center of the pump per se, is full of oil. So it's all oil bath lubricated. There's a diaphragm that goes on top of each piston, and that separates basically all the moving components from the fertilizer. And anything that touches fertilizer is poly on our new pump. So again, going back to reliability, they're hydraulic driven. They all use the same motor. I'd say max draw on that's about 8 gallons a minute. You know, we're not sizing our systems to run wide open, so you know, kind of the rule of thumb is generally around 5 gallons a minute.
Sure.
But from a reliability standpoint, you know, really about all you got to do is change that oil every year. Maybe put some new diaphragms after 3,000 hours of operation. I mean, they're just pretty well bulletproof.
Yeah. And the reason I've used them a lot is talk about their power of sucking from like a front tank. Yeah,
absolutely. They have incredible amount of suction, just that diaphragm design. So a very common scenario we'll set them up in is put the pump on the back of the planter. We have some custom brackets for different planters, and we'll put them, you know, on like a 1770 or 1775 John Deere. We'll put it up over the rear tire on the center section, and we're actually able to pull from front tanks up on the tractor. So, and really maximize that capacity of the tractor, and we don't have to worry about having a pusher pump to push it back. It just simplifies that whole system in that scenario. Yeah, they have. I think I was talking to some of the guys, you know, early on they did some testing, and they were able to, you know, we have some pallet racking, much like, you know, you have around here, you know, it's 10, 15 foot in the air, and they were actually able to put the pump up on the top of the pallet racking and actually prime from a tote that was down on the ground.
Really?
So, yeah. The only thing we just, we put an air bleed on every one. We just need to have a path to air until that gets primed. They're great pumps, not great air compressors. So if we have a vent to air, atmosphere air, they really don't have much problem getting them primed at all.
That's awesome.
So,
and that's a scenario where I will always lean towards that is when the guy tells me he has a front tank. I'm always pointing him towards that diaphragm because I don't want to mess around with, a pusher pump or anything like that.
Absolutely. I mean, they're not the cheapest pump out there, but man alive, I'll put them up against anything out there. I have a customer over in Illinois that he was switching his between his planter and his side dress bar, and he's a good sized grower. And one day I asked him, it's probably 5 or 6 year old pump. I said, how many gallons do you figure that thing is pumped? And it was, like 1.5 million gallons, and all he's done is change oil, and every 2 years he changed the diaphragms in it, and just took care of it. But it really lasted him a long time. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then from there, let's talk about some of the more in depth. You've got row by row flow options. You've got rate controllers. How far can we go with this stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, we can go from, we every once in a while we'll still sell a system with an orifice, but kind of the heart of our system is metering tube technology. So basically, to explain it in a nutshell, kind of think of you take an orifice and you stretch it 8 feet long. So a metering tube is a 1/4 inch piece of air line. We have 11 different sizes of ID. So every row has an 8-foot chunk of that. That's how we're getting that restriction to create the even distribution. So the big advantage is the size of the hole that the product flows through. So what we say is a metering tube is 3 to 4 times the size of the comparable orifice that you would use. So
got it.
You can see plugging becomes a way less issue.
Sure.
Our systems only require a 20 mesh filter because that's whatever will pass through that 20 mesh filter will pass through the smallest tube that we have.
Got it.
That's why we put that 20 mesh filter in there. And we find they have a bigger flow range over the same amount of pressure. Like a orifice, if you want to double your flow, you quadruple your pressure.
Yep.
With the metering tubes, it's not quite as cut and dry as that example, but if you doubled your flow, you might only raise your pressure maybe 30-40%. So they just have a wider flow range. So in a lot of our systems, we'll put a small tube and a large tube together, give you a way or automatically control 2 different systems, but to direct the flow down the small tube or the large tube based off of pressure. We're trying to manage that pressure, whether it be a different product, a different rate. If you have what we just call our manual dual tube system, we just have a check valve at each row. That actually we have 2 check valves, one for each size of tubing, and then you simply can turn the knob on top of the check valve to control the flow, whether it go through the small tube, large tube, or both. So that helps manage our pressure. The hydraulic pumps are capable of just gobs of pressure. There's a pressure relief valve at 100 psi that keeps us from blowing things up, but I think they're rated at like 300 psi. So
wow.
Pressure range on those is we try to keep it between 15 and 70. If you start bumping 100, stuff starts leaking. Flow indicators. Your check valves start seeping and stuff. Mm-hmm. But we also offer an electric pump option. So in furrow rates up on planters up to 16 rows is kind of where we'll spec that tower system, we call it.
Yep.
So it's got 2 electric pumps, kind of comes all pre-assembled. But one thing that we really try to do with that is try to keep the pressure below about 35 pounds of pressure. We find that those pumps last a lot longer. All the components last longer. It just makes for a smoother running system. So
Definitely.
with the dual metering tubes paired with that, gives us a real easy way to manage that pressure, whether we're changing rates, changing products, or even just temperature swings. 1034.0 at 40 degrees or 50 degrees is got viscosity changes is way different than at 70 degrees.
Right.
So how do we manage that? And that's how we do that. So talked about the manual dual tube system. We have a system called LiquiShift, and that automatically switches from the large tube to this, from small tube, large tube, and then we'll actually open both back up. We do that based off of pressure. The application for that system is, a high-speed planner is kind of what brought that system about. So, you put your planter in the ground, you start out, you're going 4 mile an hour, your pressure's 25, 30. If I go, start opening it up, get up to, 8, 10 mile an hour, that pressure's going to spike. It'd be, if we weren't managing, it'd be well over 100 more than likely.
Right.
So when that pressure gets to 70, that's when we close the small tube off and open the large tube. And that, obviously, that pressure goes back down. If the pressure gets to 70 again, we'll open that small tube back up. So we're flowing through both tubes. So it gives us just a huge amount of range, like a 10x flow range through that system.
Right.
While we maintain a optimal operating pressure. So high-speed planters, applicators, liquid applicators, running a variable rate rec. That's very common, and then you throw some speed in there. It really gets you get some very wide rate ranges, flow range through there.
Right.
So with all our systems, you can add what we call sentinel row monitoring. We put a flow meter in each row to measure that flow. So it's not a ball that's floating that we're measuring. We're actually knowing the exact gallons per minute and gallons per acre. We show that on an ISO display. It'll show, on your Deere display, your ag leader, your case, it'll pop up through the virtual terminal, and you can see that. So you'll get audible and visual alarms when they go outside the parameters of that. Whether it be high or low, it'll squawk and beep and carry on, and hey, I got a problem, I need to fix it.
Sure.
Obviously, we still offer the traditional floating ball flow indicator as a more of our baseline. So that's like our standard. Like if you said, hey, I want to quote a system, that's probably what we're going to quote you, unless you specify, hey, I want to step up to get that sentinel row monitoring system.
Sure.
So back to that LiquiShift. I kind of skipped over that for a minute. Not only are we managing the pressure, we put a zip valve on each row. So a zip valve is just a baby section valve. So that goes like on a planter, we generally put that on the parallel arm of the planter, close to the point of application. So that's your section valve and your check valve. So there's not a traditional diaphragm and spring in that system check valve. We use that positive opening and closing of that mini section valve to act as the check valve. So, you don't have those dripping check valves. And in our testing, we found that they can cause some pretty good row-to-row deviation too, as those springs wear. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of LiquiShift, Gen 3 LiquiShift in a nutshell, is that auto switching of the tubes and the zip valves on each row. But the next step up the rung on the system, so kind of have the base system, the middle of the road, and then the top one is an actual individual row control system.
Okay.
So we're utilizing that sentinel flow meter that we're measuring the flow of each row through that electromagnetic flow meter, and now we're controlling that row on an individual basis. We have essentially it's a stepper valve with a needle and a seat, and we run that needle in and out to control the flow on that individual row.
I see.
So
in real time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Several times a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably like a PWM valve in a way.
Yeah, it's a stepper motor, so we can command it in small steps and large steps, just depending on the rate, how close to rate it is. So when
Sure.
it gets closer, we just move it a little bit. If it's off a lot, we'll move it a wider amount to get to rate quicker.
Right.
But all that can run through that same ISO module that can do the row monitoring. It has the capabilities to run that rate control or that row control system. It can also be used as an ISO rate controller as well. So it's very functional, that Sentinel module.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got multiple uses. We can do, just row monitoring. We can just do rate control. We can do the row control. We can control NH3 with it. We can do NH3 blockage, all with that same ECU.
Really?
So, yeah, it's a very versatile ECU. No unlocks needed. Can control up to 4 different products at one time, too.
Dang.
So we've really put a lot of work into that, probably the last 5 years, that Sentinel platform, especially on the, the controlling side of it.
And so in the future, is that what is going to end up replacing like the John Deere Green Star and RC2000, or?
I think short term, but maybe not long term. I think, Deere's going to have their own proprietary solution, but I mean, it's a great solution. I mean, it works great on the Gen 5 Deere, the Gen 4 Deere, the Pro 1200, Pro 700. It's a very universal solution. I've worked in precision ag for a long time, and whenever anyone would say ISO control, you kind of just cringed and hope you weren't the guy that had to work on it. And and to be honest, when we said we're going this route, that was the thought I had.
Yeah.
Was, oh no, I'm going to be that guy.
Yeah.
But it works very, very well. I've been very impressed at the compatibility, the ease of use. I mean, it's still ISO. We've tried to make it look a little better than the 1980s look.
Sure.
But there is a little bit of that. We're just you're limited on what you can do. But again, it's just the performance has been great. I mean,
well, that's what matters.
Exactly. Have we stubbed our toe on a few things? Absolutely. But we got a great group of engineers, a great team behind that, and they generally, I mean, I've had them fix things within hours.
Sure.
I'll call it, hey, this is just really, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And, get on the phone with our engineer, and he's like, oh, yeah, well, give me a minute. And, and next thing you know, he's sending me a new software to load up, and away we go. So, I mean, that was early years. Now it's been out long enough. We've got all the major bugs out of it. So,
sure.
But, we got dry product coming for that, dry control, potato. We got some software. We can run some potato planters on that stuff. So
I was going to ask, you guys have really been deep into planters and stuff. What do you see with the future of planter fertilizer? Are guys wanting to maybe go more strip till and get that off of the planter, or is it something that you just now, especially with the integration with Deere, you just see more and more planters rolling out with fertilizer on them?
Yeah, I mean, planters is obviously our number one. We see a lot of it, but strip tills, the guys are talking about it. I mean, every year you see a little increase. Especially the spring strip fresheners are pretty hot right now. Get a lot of quotes for systems on that kind of stuff. Guys wanting to split up their application, band it, become, when you're banding it, obviously you're more efficiently placing that fertilizer.
Yep.
Spreading their risk out so you're not putting it all on at the same time. There's
right.
a lot of things that make sense,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're seeing a big push on strip till, but at the same time, we're hanging just as many tank brackets on planters too. So I don't think it's ever going away. We're getting to the point now to where in the past, maybe a guy could only carry, 100 gallons on his planter. Well, now, geez, he's got 200 on the wings. He's got 500 in the center and maybe a front tank too.
Absolutely.
And he's rolling through there pretty heavy, but he can cover some acres. So, yeah, I don't see it going away. And then you've got the bean side. It seems like there's been an uptick in not only in furrow, but maybe now some 2x2. I just saw something come out with Bex recently where they were messing around with some nitrogen 2x2 on soybeans and seeing some decent numbers. So, yeah, I don't see it slowing down.
Not at all. I mean, you look at the technology coming for in-furrow products, whether it be micros and fungicides or, whatever, biologicals, a lot of that stuff, you want to put it where it needs it. That stuff ain't cheap.
Right.
And there's a lot of them have a positive return.
Yep.
And as margins get tighter, we're looking for something we can have a little bigger win on. That's a lot of guys will look to that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll see plenty of that. On the, we've installed a few of the planter kits, and those are pretty sweet. The Sentinels and running all that through ISO. We've gotten our feet wet there. It's definitely a good system. And now that it's integrated with Deere, you see them pushing out through the Deere dealership all the time, and you see a lot of planters rolling with planter tanks on them and that diaphragm pump sticking out the back.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you look at the future of fertilizer. You see, Deere has an Exacta shot, and some other people have had that dosing proceed. I don't know where that goes, but it's some pretty neat technology that's coming down the road. I mean, the concept really isn't new. Capstan had it for quite a few years.
Right.
Field 360's got it, so there's probably some merit to that.
Sure. So. Shifting gears over to the semi tender trailers. Let's talk about those. We've got a quick draw here in the shop we're getting ready to install here in the next week or so. Let's talk about your quick draw, because I'm just familiar enough with it to describe to someone what it does, but that thing's pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our quick draw spray tender, easy way to explain it is basically you put a as applied recipe in the controller. So whether that be quarts, pints, ounces per gallon, whatever, you build that recipe, assign it a load order, give it a name, obviously, and that controller will save that recipe. So what I say, tell guys is if you can remember what you called that recipe, it'll store up to about 500 recipes in that controller. You can recall that recipe. Obviously, we got to make sure our chemicals are attached to the right valve on the side, but tell it how many gallons you want of that, or acres. We can tell it in either way, and it's going to mix that load for you. The flow meter we use to measure that chemical in there is a very accurate flow meter. It's 0.5% error. Doesn't need calibrated. We don't have to tell it how many, the density of the product or anything like that. It's called a mass meter. So we're scale and motion is another name that the manufacturer describes it as. So we're weighing that product as it flows through there. And then we're measuring the density of that product. And then we can figure that back to gallons, how many gallons of that product. So that's how it's so accurate. I mean, because when you look at, chemicals, you might have a 8-pound crop oil, you might have an 18-pound product coming right back in. And how do we measure that accurately? And that's where we came up with that mass meter. I shouldn't say we started using it. They've been using it in industrial applications for a long time. Again, very accurate flow meter. So what I say is, if you can't measure that accurately, there's not a whole lot of point in automating that process.
Yeah.
So as general statement, we can cut your load times in about half if you're, manually mixing them. We do that very accurately. We do it safe. It's a closed system. You're not handling the product. And we do it fast. A 1,000-gallon load, 7 to 8 minutes while you stand there and watch it run. So
wow. And it completely controls and regulates your 3-inch Honda pump too,
correct,
right?
Correct. Yeah. So kind of how the system works, your transfer pump's going to pump under pressure into the quick draw. So whether it be water, 28, whatever you're using as a carrier, we pump it in under pressure. The load's kind of broke up into 3 phases. A preload, so we're going to put some carrier in the sprayer before we put the chemicals in. So, and that can be set in a percentage of the load. Let's just say we're going to put 10% of the carrier in as a preload. When that happens, when that is flowing in, it's flowing through a 3-inch line inside of there. So we get we'll say full flow, 250, 300 gallons is pretty common with a 3-inch pump. Once we get that preload in there, we transition over to what I call the chemical phase. We close that 3-inch bypass off, open up a passageway across the venturi. So there's a venturi inside the cabinet, and then that creates the suction to pull the product in from the tote. So we don't need any pumps, tote pumps, or anything additional to the quick draw. The suction generated with that venturi from the carrier flowing across it is what draws that product in. So that pulls them through that mass meter to measure the actual product. And then we open and close the valves to control that. They're a smart valve on the side. They're a can valve. They give us feedback of position and so on and so forth. So we know, hey, it's closed. We're not just relying on sending the signal out there and hoping it closed. We have confirmation that valve closed. So in between each chemical, we rinse that out, flush that product all out into the sprayer before we start the next one, so we don't have any concentrated chemicals coming, head to head. Sometimes that can cause some cottage cheese type textured stuff to be made. And then so we can do up to 9 products automatically. We have 3 different models: a 4 product, a 6 product, and a 9 product. So we can do up to 9 automated products. Additional to that, during the recipe, we can do up to 5 manually added products. That's something where you're measuring yourself and putting in through like the eductor, whether it be on your trailer or on your sprayer, will tell you how many full jugs and the partial ounces. We do that math for you. So it'll pop up on the screen and say,
really?
Hey, I need 2.5 gallon jugs, and then 68 ounces as a remainder. So it kind of makes you don't have to get your calculator out anymore, that's for sure.
Wow.
But, so once it gets all those chemicals in, it does a long 10-second rinse just to make sure everything is flushed out, and then we'll transfer back over to that 3-inch bypass being back open, and it'll top the sprayer off. So there's an electromagnetic flow meter that's measuring all that carrier, whether it be water or whatever. And when it gets to whatever that calculated amount is, it'll shut down, it kills the motor, closes the valves. There's an optional air purge valve you can put on there, where we use the truck's air supply and push that product out of the hose into the sprayer, so you're not handling a heavy 3-inch hose full of product. And that's all automatic, to the end of the batch. So we make a as mixed report for every batch, so you can put your client farm and field information into the controller. Before you start the batch, you tell it, hey, what field I'm in, hit the go, and then it saves that report, and you can get that back out with our there's a iPad app that kind of coincides, and a Wi-Fi router built into that controller, and that's how we get our recipes in and then the history back out. So yeah, I think we're about 10 years into that product line, and it has evolved a lot over that time, from the first ones all the way up to what we see now. So
this was a question I meant to ask earlier on. What was the first product from Surefire?
Liquid systems.
Okay, on planters.
Like that diaphragm pump.
Sure. Okay.
Metering tube was born very early in SurePoint's existence, just basically out of a need for, I think it was Actigrow that kind of came to us and said, hey, we have this really thick, goopy product that we want to distribute evenly across the planter. And Josh, he's our GM now, Josh Walters, he's an engineer, and he had a epiphany one day and said, hey, we could do this. So that's where metering tubes. So that really early on, that I think that's what differentiated us, was that metering tube along with that very reliable diaphragm pump. And then all our systems have electromagnetic flow meters on there. So reliability and accuracy is what we're after.
Yeah.
You know, we're not the cheapest one out there, but
Right.
you know, from a cost perspective, you want something reliable and accurate, or you want something cheap. They kind of most generally don't go hand in hand together.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So that quick draw system, that thing's pretty sweet. I've talked to a lot of guys about that, and that changes the game for spraying.
oh, absolutely.
I mean, just taking the guesswork out of it, and you know, maybe measuring something out. Oh shoot, was that ounces or pounds that I just measured?
You're exactly right. I mean, it takes one of the more stressful processes of spraying. You know, the spraying process, loading. There's a lot of chances for you to make some mistakes in that whole process, and it automates that and makes it, you know, easier, more accurate. It's just guys that have it, you know, they kind of equate it to like auto steer.
Yeah.
You know, it just, you know, they didn't know it. They needed it till they had it, and they're like, you ain't never getting rid of this thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you know, you feel like maybe you mixed something wrong, and so you're driving by that field for like the next 7 days to wait for it to turn brown. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. So we talk planters, we talk quick draw. What else does SurePoint offer?
So we offer the Dawn product line of row cleaners.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we just took that on. Just this spring was our first, or this selling season was our first year. So we got the GFX row cleaner, hydraulic trailing design. That again runs through an ISO controller. We also have their closing wheel options, the M series closing wheels, screw adjust row cleaner, and then next year we have some more products coming from that line. So something kind of different for us. You know, it's not fertilizer, it's not a tendering system, but it's something on the planter, something we're familiar with. So absolutely. We also sell our Spartan chemical, you know, direct inject type pump. So we have that put a lot of those on anhydrous bars, you know, with the nitrogen stabilizers, on planters with different, you know, insecticides and some fungicides and whatnot. So pairs well with our systems, obviously. So it's a good system. It's robust. It's cast iron pumps. It's not like, you know, some of our competition uses like a plastic design. It seems like, well, we have to rebuild this every year, every other year. It's not that, you know, it's a very robust pump. So but we have a fertigation injection pump that we sell. We call that our Marksman. Again, we're measuring that. You can control it with your phone, you know, remote connectivity for, you know, pumping fertilizer in through irrigation center pivots. We do some other stuff, but that's, you know, that's the main stuff there. So, but
interesting.
Yeah.
Now, will you be down at Louisville?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll be down there all week. I can't think of our booth number right off our head, but you know, we're at the end of that main row where all the big guys are. So,
sure.
But yeah.
Any new products coming out here in the near future?
Not anything too exciting. Putting a lot of effort into the Quick Draw Cloud, so hopefully that'll be coming here in the near future, where we can have a cloud solution for the recipes and the history, just in advancing that Sentinel ISO controller, adding, you know, dry products, seeding, that kind of, just adding some capabilities. So neat stuff coming, just not anything cool and shiny to touch and feel. So
sure. Yeah. Like I said, we've gotten real familiar with a lot of the SurePoint products, and I forget where we ever first connected. It's been probably just through some quotes and stuff through Surefire at the time. And then we connected again this summer at the Farm Progress Show.
Yep.
Cody and I about died of hunger out there. And if you've ever been out there, it's rough getting food. And Cody and I, we went to go get food at like 11:30, and the line was so long. And then we went to this one place. We were waiting in line, and they had ran out of food. And it got to be like 3 o'clock, and we were like, man, we've been walking all day. We are starving. And we stumbled across Dru in the Surefire booth, and they were cooking out back. And he's like, hey, if you're hungry, go out back. And I think we cleaned off that grill. We were starving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had those stuffed hot peppers. Any other day, I probably wouldn't have eaten one. They were so hot. But I was starving.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we try to, I don't know, it's something fun we can do, and kind of breaks up the monotony of the farm show. Is kind of, we cook dinner every lunch every day. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's outside, and that's cool. And then at Farm Science Review, we all stayed. I only stayed, I think, maybe one night, but at the Deer Creek Lodge.
Absolutely, that was a good time. I never stayed there, and it's a beautiful place, and got to hang out with some cool people, meet some new friends, and
that's fun. It's a nice place to hang out, and they of course just renovated that place, and so they've got the outdoor setting and the fire pits and stuff. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that was a good week.
Yeah, the stuff like that makes the farm shows, like I remember some shows you'll go to and you just go back to the hotel and it's like, I guess we'll just go to bed now. But really, Farm Science Review, it's like what happens at the show is great, but like if you can go hang out with people in the evening, that's a lot of fun too.
Absolutely. I really look forward to farm shows because I'm my own guy out here. It's
Sure.
just me.
Yeah.
And it's a good time to get with, the fellow TMs or people from the office that come out to work the show. So I have a lot of fun at farm shows, just hanging out with my comrades. So
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll have a full team there next week.
Oh, absolutely. I think around 8 of us will be down there. So yeah, I'll leave Monday morning. We'll set up Monday and Tuesday and
Great.
Be there for the marathon of the show. So.
There you go. Yeah. Last year was packed.
Yeah.
We're going to have a booth upstairs. I call it upstairs in the big room.
Yep.
And then we'll have our standard booth in the west wing.
Got ya.
Just because last year there were times it was so packed that you couldn't even walk around the hall, and we would be dead in the west wing and it would be loaded up top.
I got you.
And so I was like, we called up there maybe a couple months ago and they had a spot open, and it's just down the way from Salford.
Okay. Well,
so
that worked out for you guys. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to try it. It's a 10 by 20 and
cool.
So maybe catch some guys that we didn't downstairs, upstairs, and
for sure
see what we get.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I look forward to the show every year. It's long, but it's always a good show. So.
It's great. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
No doubt. Well, Dru, I've taken up enough of your time today. I really appreciate you coming over and doing the podcast.
Absolutely. I thank you for the invite and be able to have a little conversation with you. It was fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do more of them in the future. I don't even know what episode this is, maybe in the 40s or 50s, but we're starting to climb up there, and it's just something that you got to keep doing.
Absolutely.
Our YouTube channel is like 9 years old, and it's just now really starting to chug.
Got you.
It's always been pretty decent, but you can now upload a video and get a solid 1,000 views, which for guys like Brian Brown, where you're at today, that's comical. But for just pure educational videos, that's decent.
Absolutely.
And so we're getting to that point where we can upload those videos, and I'm excited to do one on this quick draw.
For sure.
When we get that thing buttoned up, we'll have to do one on
Absolutely.
And show everyone, I'm sure you have videos on it too, but just show everyone what the heck it does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to come over and run through that, and maybe we can put some water in it, bump it around, and do some of that fun stuff. So
cool. Well, that's all we've got today, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, and thanks a lot, Dru, for coming over.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.